There's no player that steps on the pitch doesn't want to win. Winning is a thing. It's just not the biggest thing. The biggest thing is their development. Coaching is connections, isn't it? The deeper the trust between the two of you, the easier it will be when they're going through a hard time to help them and let them know that I'm there for you and I can help you get through this. So I'll come up and shake your hand. How are you? I'm all right. And you can tell from their body language they're not all right. It's taking the time to go, how are you really? And then the answers will come. I think a coach should ask a few questions of every player before a session starts. Like, how was school today? What was your best bit? What was your favourite lesson? What are you doing in history right now?
How important is technical ability versus mentality?
I don't think you would have a sustained career in the Premier League if your mentality wasn't really good.
When you have players come into your training sessions and you're like, I really want to work with this player today.
The desire to improve is really important. So talk about the learnability piece. We would want them to have a love of the game, hopefully a love of the club as well.
What would make a player be presented to the first team?
I think all of that and a great mentality.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Select Generation podcast. Today we're joined by Dan Carroll. He is the Academy coach developer at Bournemouth. I'm really excited today to speak to Dan and kind of hear about his journey. It is an interesting role that Dan has. He's not, I'll let him introduce himself and kind of talks about what he does, but he's very involved in the day-to-day of being a coach at a Premier League club, a Premier League academy. And I'm interested to get his perspective on what he thinks about football. Recently on the podcast, we've been talking a lot about kind of English football culture. And I think it's really interesting, personally for me, living in the US for the past 7-8 years, to kind of come back to the UK and understand more about the game, how coaches think, the philosophy. And yeah, just really excited for you to be here, Dan. First of all, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
For someone listening to this that doesn't understand your title, are you a coach? Are you a manager? What is Academy Coach Developer?
So my job is to line manage a group of coaches, some full-time, some part-time, from under 9s to under 14s, and to work with them, support and challenge them to help them get better.
So what does that mean in simple terms? Are you telling them what drills to do? Are you telling them what they tactically need to do? Like what specifically are you doing?
I guess the answer is it depends. So they will all have a development plan.
Okay.
So I will help them work towards their development plan.
Interesting.
So some might be around session design. Some might be around tactical development, something like that. Some might be around working with individuals. Some might be around stress resilience on a match day. So it depends.
So how do you get into that? Because there's a lot of players who stop playing, they go into coaching. There's a lot of coaches that just love being a coach. Like, what's your story? How did you get into that?
So I was, to keep it as brief for you as possible, I was a teacher, a PE teacher and a semi-pro footballer in the first instance. So I've been coaching as a teacher for a long time. When I got towards the end of my playing career, I wanted to stay in football. I wanted to go into coaching. So I did that. I've now worked in 4 academies, and I am probably the oldest coach in the building. Second oldest. But yeah, so just the range of experiences I had, the head of coaching suggested that I went into the coach development role because I've got some experiences that I can share and help the other coaches.
So why do you want to be a coach development and not a coach, or is it both?
Personally, I love coaching, so I don't want to stop coaching. But you're still coaching. You're just coaching coaches. It's just a different way of looking at it.
So when you were going into coaching in the first place, what was your goal? Because I think that people, previously speaking to a lot of coaches, they just love football. They want to be involved in it and they like giving back to players and kind of understanding players. When you started your coaching career, were you trying to be a professional coach? Were you trying to be a youth coach? Like, why did you get into coaching?
It's a great question because looking back now, I don't think I actually knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to stay in football. I knew that because of my teaching background, and I had done a lot of coaching at school.
So
I knew that I could offer something.
What is a PE teacher? Sorry.
So I would teach PE and games I taught in 3 schools. Right, so gymnastics, swimming, basketball, badminton, all these different sports, football, rugby, cricket. So I was qualified to coach all of those. And I had, when I was playing, particularly at clubs like Stevenage, other people would say, oh, you'll end up being a coach one day.
Why?
So the seeds, I don't know, maybe it's just communication skills or something like that. But you kind of chat, particularly in the medical room, if you've got an injury and there's a couple of you there and you're getting treatment, or it might be the day before or morning before you start training, just talk about what might the future hold. So it kind of always been in there. And then I started coaching an under 18s team, really enjoyed it, had a vision of how I wanted the boys to play. They seemed to enjoy it. And then I was asked to step up the next season and work with the first team, who I had played. That was the club I'd finished playing at, Tooting and Mitcham. So I was familiar with all the players. That made it easier because coaching's about connections, and I had been one of their teammates. I think they respected the fact that I'd had a pretty good semi-professional career, and I had half an idea of what I was doing on the coaching side, and therefore that made it easier for me.
So how do you get into coaching? Because I think that a lot of clubs recruit based on CV and licenses and badges and all of this. Did you get your 18s job just because you knew someone? Did you have to go through a load of coaching qualifications? Like how, let's say that, okay, Dan, I want to be the under 18 coach of Tooting and Mitcham. Do I need a license, or how do I get that?
Yeah, so I got it because I had been the club captain and they wanted me to stay in the club, and the first team manager I'd played for a long time. So it was about who I knew. Although I'd like to think that he also saw something in me that made him think that I could be a good coach. He knew I was a teacher at the time as well. In terms of qualifications, I had started my qualifications when I was at university. Obviously, learning to be a PE teacher, you have to do a certain number of qualifications. So that started for me at 19 years of age.
Right.
But I actually took my B licence in my last season as a player. So I got my B licence, and then essentially the B licence back then was the first real licence of coaching 11v11.
How important is having a licence to get a coaching job?
If you're talking about in an academy, you have to be a B licence coach. It's the rules of the EPPP. So from an audit perspective, you will get a red mark against you if you're not appropriately qualified in.
Do you think that's important? Because there might be a really good coach who doesn't have a license. Why can't he get a Premier League job? Or do you think it's important that they have that rule in place?
It's difficult. So I know a couple of coaches who have got their level 2 and are really good coaches, and I've got no doubt they could be academy coaches if they wanted to. The rules are there. I'm not a rule maker, so you abide by the rules. The rules are there. Therefore, if you want to be an academy coach, that's something that you have to do.
So what does the license get you that if I take the course and I get the license, what do I have over the person that didn't take it? What are you learning on the course?
Essentially, there's a range of it, because a fair bit of it is about you and working out your philosophy. So you're gaining a deeper understanding of what you want to go after. You're getting some tuition from FA tutors on appropriate practice design for what you're trying to get out. And so you're understanding a structure of how to coach the game.
What does that mean in simple terms? Like for me, because I'm trying to a listener that is not very educated in football, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a player who thinks, we just go to training, we do a rondo and then a passing pattern. What if I had a coach that had a UEFA B license? What's he learned on that course?
It's difficult for me to say exactly because I'm not a B licensed tutor,
Right.
and I took my B license in 2008.
Okay.
So it will have changed since I did it.
Right.
But back then it was simply about, these are the practices you would use and the principles of the game and how you coach them in order that you can coach an aspect of it.
So is it teaching you like specific drills to do in training, or is it teaching you more of like the purpose and the why you're doing a session?
It's all of it.
Really?
So, but it's showing you that there are different practices, different practice types. And then what you have to think of is, if you do an unopposed practice, you get loads of repetition, but you'll lose realism because it's unopposed. So you're probably building confidence. You won't be building skill because there's no opposition.
Interesting.
If you go what they would call a phase of play, essentially attack v defence, there's high realism, but each individual player might not get as much repetition as they would have done in a slightly smaller sided game.
How do you balance your own individual philosophy with the club that you're working at? Because I'm sure that there's a lot of really good coaches. They want to play a certain style away, and then they have success, and then they get offered a Premier League job maybe, and then the Premier League club is playing 4-4-2 and they're low block, and this coach really wants to be expressive, and then they have a new manager comes in that changes his style of play. Like, how do you balance your own philosophy with the club you're working at's philosophy?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've worked in 4 different academies, and one of them we had to play the way the first team played. So it was very kind of dictatorial.
From what age?
That was from under 13s doing 11v11. They had to play 4-4-2 and they had to be quite direct.
And how did the coaches deal?
I found that quite challenging in terms of my personal philosophy wouldn't have been to be as direct. And I also felt that the boys were only learning one way of playing the game. And the chance of getting into the first team is pretty slim. The stats will tell you it's very slim. So are we really preparing them for the wider game of football if they're only learning one way? So I did have a bit of a battle with that, but I wanted to work in academy football and I wanted to develop as a coach and learn from various, in all of them, there's been really good people who I could learn from. So I took that, learnt from it, and then when I moved on, I just basically tried to grab as much as I could from everybody. The other academies I've worked at have been quite open. So at Bournemouth, we will now say it's about principles rather than you must play this way. So in possession,
can you give us an example of that?
So in possession, our principle is play first. So it doesn't tell you whether you have to be through, around or over, but essentially there needs to be a thought behind your action. Right. So they don't just want you to smash it without thinking. You can play a ball over the top. If the other team is pressing high, you've got enough time on the ball and you've got the range of pass and you've got a quick forward who's going to be running in behind. That's a great pass. It's a good decision. What they don't want is people just going really direct for no reason when there might be a better option on.
So as a coaching staff, how often do you speak with the coaches directly? Are you having weekly meetings? Are you having monthly meetings? Like, how often are you kind of getting feedback and trying to improve them?
So again, it will depend. So with the full-time coaches, I'm in the office with them every day. So you can have informal chats every single day. I try and have an actual sit down and maybe a tea, a coffee or a walk with a full-time coach every other week if I can, just to check in how are things going, and also just to check that what do they want my support to look like, because it can change.
What do you think is your most valuable asset as an academy development coach? Like, why do you have your job and someone else doesn't have? What are you best at?
I think that I'm good at working with people and building relationships. So I think that really helps. I think that the different experiences that I have, and so I've coached at Bournemouth, I've done every age group from under 9s to under 18s as the lead coach. So I can empathise with all the coaches that I'm working with over the age group, the age and stage that they're working at. So I think that helps, that there's someone that you can bounce ideas off. I have been at the club a long time, so I understand the way that we play. And so if for whatever reason something doesn't quite look right, I can chat to the coach around how we might work towards getting where we would want to be.
What's the most common question that a coach asks you that they need help with?
It's usually something around stress resilience on a match day.
What does that mean?
So there are not many coaches that I've met who coach in exactly the same way on a match day to how they do during the week.
Do you mean
so match days
tactically
different.
or do you mean mentally?
No, mentally. So how they coach might change because of the emotion of the game. So you get into the emotion of the game, and then you might start shouting more than you normally do, for example, or telling players what to do more than you normally do, because the emotion of the game, your desire to win, for example, might affect you.
And how do you manage that?
It's really difficult. It's about, and again, it depends on what they want from me. Do they want support? Do they want stretch? So I had one coach who got, essentially in his head, he was worried about what the parents would think if the team wasn't doing particularly well in a game. We've only relatively recently moved to Cat 2 from having been Cat 3 for a long time. And we now play Cat 1 and Cat 2 clubs in matches. And initially he was a bit concerned that we might struggle, for example, against like a Chelsea or an Arsenal. But he was up for a challenge. So one day I challenged him to go round to the parent side and stand in front of them and coach from there, which threw him out of his comfort zone. But he got round there and he got on with it. And we chatted about it afterwards.
Why was that a challenge?
Because he was, so normally we're kept away from the parents. They're on one side, we're on the other. So generally they don't, if you're talking to the players, they don't hear it. But if you're over there coaching right in front of them and the players come over to you,
and why do you think that would be a good idea?
To see how he responded to it. He wanted a high challenge that day. So, okay, let's see.
Why is that a
this
challenge?
does.
Why is that going out of his comfort zone? Because I know
it's just personal for him though.
Right, okay.
So he was concerned. Ultimately the issue for him was that he was concerned about the parents, what they might think of him.
What age is this?
Under 11s last year, I think it was, under 12s.
Yeah.
FP.
How do you deal with parents as a coach in a football academy? Because in a lot of environments, I feel like the parents are not that involved. But obviously, when you're younger, the parents are probably more involved. So how do you deal with? Do you have a parents' evening?
Yeah, so they'll have 4 reviews a year with the parents. They get feedback on. There's essentially a computer site that they go on called the Football Intelligence Platform, and they'll get a written review every 6 weeks, but a parent review every 12.
Right.
So the parents come in, but it's the players' review that the parents come in. So really the vast majority of it is the coach talking to the player and the player talking about their development. And then at the end, there's an opportunity for parents to chat. But really there's not masses of interaction between coach and parent. If there are any issues, of course, they can come and have a meeting. Academies have changed now, so we now have player care officers and people like that who tend to be the buffer, and any issues would come into them, and then they would go to the coach and then go back to the players to the parents in many cases. When I first started coaching in academy football, it was simply you would come to me and I would have a chat with you, and we'd talk about whatever the issues were.
So if I'm a coach at Bournemouth at those sorts of age groups, is my coach full-time? Is my coach part-time? Does my coach have 5 age groups to manage? Like, I think obviously as you go to like 18s, 23s, it's more full-time.
Yeah.
The younger age groups are coaches part-time? Have they got multiple teams? Like, how do you balance it?
So we're very fortunate in terms of full-time coaches. So we have a full-time coach for every age group apart from the under 10s at the moment.
Wow.
We have cell leads, so there will be so there's a full-time nines coach, but he also does coach development for the pre-academy. There's a full-time 11s lead, full-time 12s lead, and the 12s lead is the cell lead for 10s, 11s, 12s.
What does lead mean? Just head coach?
So he's the line manager for those coaches.
Right, okay.
The under 10s have 2 part-time coaches right now.
Right, okay.
And then there's a full-time 13s coach, full-time 14s coach. The 14s coach is the cell lead for 13s, 14s. And then we mix our 15s and 16s as one squad. So we've got 2 part-time coaches and a full-time coach there. And then at 18s there's 2 coaches, and at 21s there's 2 coaches, all full-time.
How important is it to have a full-time coach in an academy?
It makes life a lot easier for the coach because your sole job is your team. With part-time coaches, and I've been one, you have a full-time job and you've also got to do planning, doing, reviewing, for paperwork.
For someone listening that thinks, yeah, he loves football, he wants to be a coach, like it's easy. You just turn up to practice, you do the session and you go to a game on a Saturday. What are they not realising about being a football coach?
Yeah, you probably spend as much time planning and reviewing as you do coaching. As much as possible gets filmed. So you'll also watch training back, you'll also watch matches back, and then clip for the players for their because the players will all have IDPs.
What's an IDP?
So it's an individual development plan. Generally, the very youngest will get kind of a couple. So one will be a strength, and then another one might be an area for development. As you get older, you'll have up to 3. Again, one will always be your what got you in the building, what's your super strength, and then you might then get a positional or a tactical one, and then a mentality one as you get older and closer to the PDP.
So I know academies and teams talk a lot about these development plans, and I think sometimes is not really like the coaches just kind of say that they've got one just to get it, and it's not really that specific or that beneficial. From your perspective, when you're giving feedback to a player, what makes a good individual development plan that they actually listen to?
Well, I think they should have some ownership of it. And that's one of the reasons why we also threw in the super strength. I have worked previously at places where everyone had 3 IDPs and they were all things to improve. And I think the message that you're sending them there is like, this isn't good enough, that's not good enough, that's not good enough. And to young children, that can be quite daunting and add stress. So I think it's really important to make it strength-based, one of them. So straight away, you'll get more buy-in because they love doing it. If I know ball striking's my strength and I'm going to do a load of ball striking in training, automatically I'm more positive.
How do you motivate players as a coach? Because I think that it can be a difficult balance. I mean, obviously football is like results-driven business. Like if you're losing, it's very difficult to motivate a squad and be proactive and have a healthy culture. So from your perspective, if a coach comes to you and he says, Dan, we're losing, I'm having trouble motivating this player, like I can't get the best out of him. I mean, it's obviously probably a very general answer, but...
So it wouldn't be about losing.
Okay. In
academy, that's probably the biggest difference between academy coaching and senior coaching.
Right.
And I must clarify, that doesn't mean we're not interested in winning. There's no player that steps on the pitch doesn't want to win. Winning is a thing. It's just not the biggest thing. The biggest thing is their development in that from the game. So yes, the players will want to win, and yes, the coach will want the players to want to win. But it wouldn't be around, well, we've lost and he's not motivated. It might be that you have to, understanding the player is huge. So coaching is connections, isn't it? You know, I talk about the connections I have with the coaches, but they're doing exactly the same with their players. So the better you understand the player, the deeper the trust between the two of you, the easier it will be when they're going through a hard time to help them and let them know that I'm there for you, and I can help you get through this. You know, we've got a boy at Bournemouth at the moment he's in the under-21 squad. He'd been out on loan and he's just had a knee injury and had surgery. He's out for quite some time. Now I coached him from when he was under 12, when he first came in, almost every age group. So we have a great relationship, and he knows that he can have a cup of tea or coffee with me and a chat if he's feeling a bit low at the moment because he can't do a lot. So it's just building connections with these players so that when they do have tough times, sometimes they just need to offload. And it might not necessarily be that I've got the answers, but they just feel like someone's there for them and you trust them. And that might be all that they need. It depends.
Yeah, people always say like, oh, relationships are so important in football. And I think people don't really understand like what that means and really like the depth of the relationship. So for you, Dan, like if I asked you how important are relationships in football and you told me, yeah, they're really important. What does that mean? Like, why are relationships important? How do I get deep relationships?
I think it's trying to get to know them on a deeper level. So I know I've had players where in the past you see them and they say hello, and most academies will have a shake hands policy. So they'll come up and shake your hand. How are you? I'm all right. And you can tell from their body language they're not all right. It's taking the time to go, how are you really? And then the answers will come. And I think that when players understand that you're noticing them, that really, really helps. I think it's important to know, like, I think a coach should ask a few questions of every player before a session starts. Like, how was school today? What was your best bit? What was your favourite lesson? What are you doing in history right now? Just little conversations like that. Just tell the players that you're interested in them. And think back to when you were at school. Probably your favourite teachers took an interest and made you feel like they cared. And it's the same with coaching and football. And
how do you
any sport? And
how do you build relationships with your co-workers, with the person you report to, with the person under you, with your coaches? How do you build relationships? So again, just spending time with them. We do life stories. So it's easier for the full-time staff because we're all in there. The part-time staff might not necessarily be able to be in there, but with the full-time staff, everyone who comes in will present on a short presentation on their life story. So there might be something in there that you would never have known, and that might spark some conversation at some stage. Try and do the same with the part-time coaches. Just understand what's going on with them away from football, not just in football. But equally, it might be, which football team do you support? And then a conversation will develop based on the game at the weekend. Do you feel like it's difficult to disconnect?
With a person or from the job?
Just from the job, because it almost becomes your identity.
Yeah, it can consume your life, and you can, football's all the game. The game goes in cycles and tactical cycles, and formations become popular and then they're not popular, but it will come back eventually. So it's important to be up, watching, talking about football, what you're seeing, who's doing stuff that's new. So at the weekend, Bournemouth played Newcastle. Bournemouth's kickoff, the ball went to Alex Scott. He flicked it up twice, booted it up in the air, and then they chased. Okay, why are they doing that? What are they gaining from that? Newcastle's kick was kick the ball off in the corner and try and pin them in. So that's very different to 5 years ago. when you would see a team take a kick-off.
Yeah.
So what's happening, what different aspects of the game might be changing, what might change in the future, how can we kind of be ahead of the curve? So there's stuff like that when it's your job and you work full time, you take an interest in it.
Do you think you're obsessed with football?
Yes and no. I think I am, but I also think that, so for example, I couldn't tell you how England played in their last game because I didn't see it because I was doing something else to do with work. So yeah, there are so many different facets to football and to coaching that I'm obsessed with that. But there will be other people who watch more games than I do and they'd be better tactically than I am. But I might be better in other areas.
Is something I'm interested to talk to you about that because it's something I personally struggle with is being is trying to disconnect. Like I'm always speaking to someone always wants something, whether it's a connection, or whether it's a review of their video, whether it's an opportunity, whether it's a conversation, Yeah. And it's not. I feel like football is not traditional where it's like, okay, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 behind a desk, and then you have your weekend to do whatever you want. Like Monday to Friday, you're training. Saturday game. Sunday, if you lost, you're watching it back and trying to figure out what to do tomorrow on a Monday.
Yeah.
So from a coach's, and I think players don't really realize how invested coaches are in them and their career, because if you're a player, and I didn't really realize this until after I played, but when you're a player, you turn up to training, you go home, you go to the gym, you watch what you eat, you watch your own film, but you just really care about you. Of course, you want the team to win and you watch the team, but you just focused on making sure you do everything you can to be the best version of yourself. When you're a manager, you got to worry about the 11, then you got to worry about the bench, then you got to worry about the players that are not in the squad, then you got to worry about the assistant coach, what he's doing, delegating. So for you, how, like when I say disconnect, are you constantly thinking about your job?
Sometimes, yeah. Like this week's a busy week. There's been reviews. There was an under-21s game yesterday. Then reviews in the evening. Today there's an under-15s Floodlit Cup match, but also catching up with people around how reviews went.
Do you get overwhelmed?
Can do. It can be. You find yourself. Like I know I'm going to do a lot of hours this week. Like Friday I'm covering for a coach, so train and travel to Swansea, stay overnight, game on Saturday morning, travel back in the afternoon, then more matches on Sunday, and I've got children myself.
And how do you manage your schedule? How do you stay organised and make sure you feel on top of everything?
Yeah, I make to-do lists. I use the calendar on my phone. I set alarms. So because the day can take you in all sorts of different directions as well. So you know what you've got to do and then something else will crop up. So I have to do stuff like that, set an alarm. If the alarm goes off, that will be, all right, I've got a meeting in 5 minutes.
For someone that wants to be a football coach because they want to make loads of money, what would you tell that person?
You won't make it in academy. You won't make a load of money in academy football initially. It also depends what your definition of loads of money is. But essentially, in football coaching, management, senior management is where any money would be. So a full-time academy job like mine is not going to give you a big salary.
So why do coaches coach?
I think they've all got different motivations. Mine is that I love football and I love teaching and coaching and I love learning. So I feel like I'm hitting all of them every day. Now that might be completely different to Elliot, who you had in recently. He might have different motivations. So yeah, I think that's an individual thing. But some will be, I want to end up as a manager in the senior game.
So you, Dan, you've coached at foundation, youth and professional.
Yeah.
How do these players or stages of training differ?
I guess I would love it that the foundation phase is called the foundation phase, because I think it's about being energetic and having fun, and it should be the highlight of their day. They generally run on the pitch when they turn up.
What age is this?
God, nines. Well, our foundation phase is 9s to 12s. Some are 9s to 11s. But because 12s is 9v9, we've kept it in the foundation phase. Like generally, they run on the pitch to really... They're little kids. So that should continue throughout the season. It's got to be the highlight of the day. Like our boys are in 3 times a week and then on a Sunday. Those 4 moments have got to be the best 4 moments of their week. So that's our challenge, to keep that enthusiasm all through the season. The youth development phase is really interesting, primarily because you end up, that's where you get the differences in growth and maturation, the adolescent brain. So it's a brilliant time for taking risks because the prefrontal cortex that essentially is your rational brain making decisions or sensible decisions, that doesn't develop at the same rate as the emotional brain. That's why young drivers have more crashes, because they take more risks. So it's a really interesting time as a coach, and I love it. And I guess as well, being a dad, I've got 2 kids now who are PDP age and 2 who are younger end of the YDP. But I've kind of lived it as a parent as well as a coach in the last few years.
Since you've been a parent, do you have a different approach to your coaching style?
Yes.
Why?
Because I was able to say to myself, would I coach my child like this?
And what's changed?
I think that just from dealing with my own kids and the good stuff and the bad stuff, because, kids are kids, aren't they? And when you've got 4 boys, there can be quite a few arguments that can get a bit tasty. But just understanding what works with and the differences between them. So we raised our kids the same way, but all 3 of my boys are different, and my stepson is different again. So it's just understanding that you can be really consistent in your behaviours, but they're all very different. Right. And so even though I was a teacher, I probably didn't consider it in much depth, and just experiencing all the different things as a father has made me realise the depth to it.
As a young coach, what's the most common challenge that you see?
I think I see a rush to want to coach at the 11v11 game, and sometimes people's skill sets isn't necessarily the 11v11 game. It might be you're an absolutely amazing foundation phase coach, and you can still coach 11v11, but you are more effective as...
Why would I be a really good foundation coach?
It might be the energy and the level of fun that you bring is... And it might be the technical detail that you might have on for different skills that you're coaching the boys is absolutely superb, and they love it. But if you try to coach PDP in the same way, they probably think you were a bit patronising, and like teenagers probably wouldn't have that approach so much.
What's a common piece of feedback that you give to coaches who are going into the 11v11 game?
The biggest thing at the moment for us is around being intentional. So don't chase too many rabbits. So if you're going after whether your team presses or decides to screen in the opposition half, coach that. Don't start coaching other stuff around it. I love the Sunday share on what was Twitter X. Absolutely brilliant. See loads and loads of different ideas that people have. And there are so many where someone's taken so much time to plan this session and it looks amazing, but they've got about 19 different coaching points, some of which are not relevant to the main topic theme that they're going after. So kind of if I was to coach you and give you 8 different coaching points, you'd probably only remember one. So stick to one thing and then go as deep as you need to for the players with that thing.
So you're saying that they coach, but why would you have like 19 different topics in a session?
Because you're kind of scattergun coaching.
Really?
So you're coaching the whole game. Like we could watch you could have a game, and you might see 4 or 5 things, and I might see another 4 or 5 things, and we'd both be right. Yeah. And it's just prioritizing what's the most important thing to coach.
Right.
But if I'm intentionally going after when to press, then I'm going to be coaching around that rather than coaching people about where they should take their first touch or where their pass should have gone.
Right. It's interesting because I saw that Bournemouth kickoff. Do you like hear from the first team like, oh, we're going to be doing this today, or no? They just
Our head of coaching will interact with first team staff and around kind of what is our playing philosophy? Is it appropriate for players to end up in their first team? But in terms of their individual tactics and set pieces, no, that's there.
No. So Dan, you were talking there about kind of like coaches being scattered about what they're trying to work on. Why are they like that? Is it because they have too many ideas that they want to fix and they're not focused?
And I think I can look back and say I know I did that when I first started coaching. You're watching the game, something catches your eye, you see it, you deal with it, but I'm giving loads and loads of different messages on loads of different parts of the game. So it's probably not as powerful as if I was going after one theme, one intention. That's not to say that the person that I'm coaching with can't be doing something else. Like they could be working with individuals, or they could be making the other team. If I'm working on pressing, when to press, how to press, they could be working with the other team and mixing up how they play so that the challenge for us is different. So it's not always the same, because it's called co-adaptation. So defense coaches attack and attack coaches defense. So if you want your defenders to defend really, really well, you need the attack to attack really well against them.
So I know we talked about it a little bit at the start, but how do you balance development and winning?
How do you balance it? Well, we will just go after trying to make the players better. So what do the players need? And I'm looking at 9s to 14s where my job takes me at the moment, rather than kind of a first team level. But if you've got we've got a cup game tonight. So the coach will, that is a game that we will focus more on winning than we would do, but development will come from that. So I don't know how the game's going to go. Last week we had a floodlit game and they could have been 8-0 down at halftime and they came in at 3-0 down. And then a couple of almost mentality tweaks were made and a couple of positional ones at half time. And we started the half very well. We got a couple of goals and all of a sudden it's a different game. So at the end of each game, you kind of step away and go, right, what was the learning? What's my main message to the players here for them to take away? So if they're in that situation again, how will they do it differently? So it'll be really interesting how they approach the first half tonight, because we're a week down the line and it's the same competition and the focus is on winning the game. Most of the games, there's no league. So there's not 3 points on offer. I think what I'm trying to say is,
how do you feel about that?
You won't do anything to win. So you don't sacrifice the playing philosophy of the club, for example, or if you've got a player who might be struggling in a position. So you might have an under 14 right back who's really small, and they might have a left winger who's biologically far, far bigger, who's getting loads of joy. From a development perspective, you might keep that right back up against that left winger and just encourage him to find different ways to defend. What can you do that might work to help?
How do you feel about not having like a league at that age?
I feel like there are definitely moments that kids can miss out on. So it might be the battle to win the league, it might be the battle against relegation, but it puts something different emotionally on the game that comes in the adult game. So I think that you could argue that they miss out on those experiences for their development. I would guess that the reason that they don't have a league is probably
Development.
To relieve pressure and focus on their own individual development.
From your experience, when you're working with players or when you're watching a player at that age, what makes you think that player is going to be a Premier League player? What makes a player stand out at that level?
I would say probably I very rarely think he's going to be a Premier League player just because so much can change. You definitely look at players at different ages and go, wow, he's the best I've seen at that age.
Why?
It might be how technically good they are. It might be how effective their decisions are within the game. Usually the physical corner in terms of their movement mechanics, their agility, how do they twist and turn? Like, there are some players that you look at and you go, okay, that I'm not going to say he's going to be a professional footballer, but you would go, I would expect to see him in a Cat 1 academy, the way that he moves or he moves with the ball.
When you say decision making, I feel like it's a very general term. Like for someone that's like, oh, I feel like I have good decision. Like as a coach,
yeah.
What is your definition of like, or can you give me an example of being someone who's a good decision maker with the ball?
So we strip it down and really simplify it. So in possession, you are in your half, for example, most of the time, you're either am I going to draw the press, which might be by staying on the ball or playing a pass sideways or out wide, or am I going to try and penetrate? Higher up the pitch, it's can I score? If not, can I create? If not, can I retain? And we try and keep it to those decisions. That makes defining whether they're making good decisions for us much easier.
When you are working with players at that age, I feel like there is a big, or I don't know about now, but when I was growing up, it was a big like, okay, he's only in the academy because he's 6 foot already, he's massive already, and there's players that are smaller, skinnier, they're much better technically, but just because they're not big, strong, fast at that age, because they've been biologically fast, they've grown up earlier. And it might be very easy for you at 16, 15 to sign a player that's just big, strong, fast than the kid maybe who's got more potential technically. So how do you balance, because you probably need both. So
I think it depends on the academy.
Right.
Some will definitely prefer the physicality and they'll go, the game's getting bigger, stronger, faster. We really like how physical you are. Your technical can be our project over the next couple of years. Others will wait for the really technical, later maturing player and just trust that he'll go through his growth later.
What do you agree more with?
Well, I have a bias because I was a late maturer. So okay. I didn't start going through my peak height velocity until I was 16. So I will always have that bias that says I'd like us to wait for the late maturing player if I think they're good enough. Their mentality and their technical is really good.
All right, this is good. I want to talk about this. I talk a lot about like mentality, attitude. The more and more people I talk to, I'm starting to realize more and more that your mentality is such a big part of you as a footballer. Believing in yourself, having confidence, taking risks, going out of your comfort zone, controlling what you can control. We have 2 13, 14-year-old players. One of them is not technically that good, but he really, really wants to learn, really wants to get better, disciplined, goes to bed at the right time, doesn't play video games, eats the right food. We have another player who's a baller, nutmegs everyone, top bins, but he's out late. He's, I don't know, eating McDonald's. He's not really focused. What's the difference between like two players? One of them, what would you tell me about those two players? How important is technical ability versus mentality?
I think they're both really important. I don't think you would have a sustained career in the Premier League if your mentality wasn't really good.
What does mentality mean to you?
So we did a really good study. We spoke to loads and loads of hundreds of people, coaches, first team managers, first team coaches, academy managers, businessmen, CEOs, and asked them for the 5 characteristics of the ideal person in their workforce. So we then had to put hundreds of characteristics up on the wall, then tried to block them together and group them. So hours of work later, we came up with what we believe are 5 pillars of what we would call an elite mentality. So resilience, inner drive, learnability, the ability to learn, self-awareness, and what we call positive impact. So kind of how you communicate and the impact you have on your teammates. So they're the 5 areas that we believe if you look at the person who might be a baller, is it their inner drive that's the problem? In which case, okay, how can I develop his inner drive? Because if he develops inner drive, he's an absolute baller. With the other guy, he might tick all these boxes. So, okay, his attitude's brilliant. He's worth keeping in the building. If he's a good learner as well, technically he should and tactically he should become better and more aware over time because he's proving to us he's a good learner. So you might keep both in the building. My bias would say longer term, the guy with a great attitude has more chance of staying in the game for longer. That doesn't mean he'll play at the very highest level.
What does a good attitude mean? When you have players come into your training sessions and you're like, I really want to work with this player today because what makes a player have a good attitude, or you want to help him as a coach?
I think that the desire to improve is really important. So talk about the learnability piece. We would want them to have a love of the game and hopefully a love of the club as well. So if you've got natural enthusiasm because you love it and you want to learn, so then your inner drive is high, you're driven, instantly you go, this is a great person to work with because you're easy to work with, your attitude's great, you work hard, you ask questions. Why wouldn't I want to work with this person?
What's the difference between academy football and men's football?
In terms of coaching in it or the game?
From a player's perspective.
I think that because there's more focus on development younger, there can be a culture shock when you go into men's football, because men's football in a lot of clubs and levels is simply around winning and losing. And if you lose too many games, the manager will get the sack and therefore there's upheaval. And if you don't win, you might lose your place. In academy football, up to and including under 16s, you're guaranteed 50% game time over the season for the games that you're available in. So you know you're going to get a lot of games, whereas in men's football, I might go into a squad as a new player, but the person in my position is not going to give me his shirt. So I have to fight to win that shirt.
When you're speaking as a coaching staff about players, how involved are you with the first team? When a first team is like, hey, Dan, we really need a winger for today's training, or we need a centre-back for next week. How often are you communicating?
I'm not involved in that at all. The first team staff members would communicate with the head of coaching and with the development squad, under 21s coaches, and liaise over who might train with them.
For a player listening to this that's wondering like what characteristics they need to have in a Premier League academy to get to the first team, what are the first team? What would make a player be presented to the first team? Technical ability, physicality, speed of play. Why would
I think all of that and a great mentality because I can't quote this from Bournemouth because I'm not involved in the conversations, but I believe that a first team manager will say, can I trust him? Can I trust him to work hard? Can I trust him to know how we play? If I can, then players will get the opportunity.
What does that mean, trust?
I think it's, are they going to go in there and show the different facets of the mentality that I talked about and work really hard? I look at Bournemouth and I see a side that presses really aggressively, reacts really quickly to transition. If any player was to go into their environment and train with them and not press really hard or react really quickly and give their best, I don't believe that they would get another opportunity to train with them. That's a big thing of that team. It may be different at other clubs, but I think that because my perception would be because managers in the first team are in a totally different position to academy coaches, I don't think they have the luxury of being able to go throw loads of players at me. We'll take them in training because their job is about winning on a Saturday and winning on a Tuesday.
How is, let's say that there's a coach that you're working with that's transitioning from academy to men's football. How is management and coaching different in academy football? Because it's probably similar to the players, whereas they have to win. But from a coaching perspective, how do your sessions differ from youth football to men's football?
So I think it would depend on the level and the club and the expectation. So I've managed in step 7 at a club that had no budget. In fact, the players would pay subs every week, so they paid to play rather than being paid. And I had to accept they might not turn up to training. So I tried to make training as engaging and as interesting as possible to get as many of them to turn up. But there were times when I'd have players say, training's an hour and a half long, I've got to go after an hour because I've got a Skittles match tonight. Well, I'm not paying him to come. I can't force him to stay. So I've got to try and build a relationship with this guy and make training as fun for him at his age as I can, so that next week he doesn't leave to go to Skittles. This is what he wants to come to. I've also managed in step 4 at a club that had a really small budget, and I was coaching there, and the manager was sacked, and I was asked to take over, and we were in desperate trouble at the bottom of the league, and it's about staying up. And I spent my life on the phone, phoning managers. Back in those days, Y-Scout didn't exist, so I spent every night going to watch matches, trying to connect with people. Who can I take on loan? Phoning up people I knew from clubs I'd worked at. My life revolved around that club and trying to get that club out of the mire. The sessions were based around the needs of the team at that time. So initially it was, let's stop conceding goals. And then it became, let's start scoring goals now that we've got some organisation at the back. Most academies, you'll find, usually have a syllabus, so like a scheme of work. So you follow the scheme of work no matter how the game went at the weekend in the schoolboy ages. So that's completely different. So it is very, very different, but you're still trying to connect with all of your players to get them to buy into what you want to do, and to let them know that you care about them. And you've got to try and work out the needs of that group and what do they really like. I coached in step 3 at Tooting and Mitcham, and I can vividly remember a guy say to me, I've worked all day, Dan, I just want to play a game. Okay, right. So how can I get what I want to get across that's mainly game-based? Because he's a big influence in the changing room. So you've got stuff like that to consider.
For young coaches wanting to coach at a Premier League academy, what advice do you give them?
Coach as much as possible. Coach as much as possible at all sorts of different levels. And you have to go through the qualifications. Like, there are the rules. We can't break the rules. So the rules are you need to have a B license. So if you've got a level 2, you can work in either the pre-academy, or we call it a JTC, Junior Training Centre. It's essentially a shadow squad. So you can work in that part of a club initially, kind of the grassroots level. And if you really like it and you make a name for yourself, then you can go through. So we've had a coach just this season who's gone from last season in our JTC. This season he's the under-12s assistant. We liked what we saw. Myself and the under-9s coach will look at the JTC and the pre-academy coaches, and some of them have ambitions to come through into the academy. So there's a lot of turnover of part-time coaches at most clubs because they don't get paid a great amount of money, and it is a big commitment. So it can be really difficult. But yeah, go coach as much as you can. Contact clubs, ask if you can come in and watch. Some will say yes, some will say no, but snap the hand off of the guy who says yes. And just try and learn as much as you can. And if you think it's for you, just keep working hard.
I've got, just at the end, I've got a quick fire round, but I wanted to ask you quickly on that point. How important is networking in football, and how do I network? I think the answer would be usually it's important. I would, off my head, I would say it depends. So I was quite fortunate through my own playing background. I got to know some people. So it's still networking, but I had an advantage at the start. There's a guy who is really, really good at A, giving advice on networking, and B, on how to get onto the B license and the A license, a guy called Temmerson Williams, who's on LinkedIn and on all the social media platforms. He's got a fascinating background. I actually spoke to him for a project I did for the ECAS course I was doing with the Premier League. Now he will tell you it's mega important. And he runs courses to help coaches on it. So yes, I think networking is important. I think lived experience is more important, but I do think networking is important. Good. Okay, done. Amazing. Last quick fire round. Five quick questions for you.
Yes.
What is the most underrated skill in youth players?
I think it's twisting and turning on the ball. And the reason I say that is I think younger age group coaches jump to passing and receiving away from kind of individual stuff on the ball.
One piece of advice every coach should follow.
It's the player's session, not yours.
That's a good one. Favorite drill for developing young talent?
In the foundation phase, 3v3 games. And then at the moment, I've got a game that I play, which you can choose what aspects of the game you want to go after, but essentially it's first team to 100 passes. So in your half, it's each pass you complete is one.
Be there all day, no?
No. So scoring system.
Okay.
So in your own half, each pass that's completed is 1. In the opposition half, each pass complete is 2. Shot on target is 5. So it's a full game.
Right.
And a goal is 10.
Right.
The risk of the shot at goal is if the goalie saves it, yes, you might get 5, but they've got the ball. And if you score, the opposition gets the ball. So it's risk and reward. So there's some problem solving in there. Where do you choose to keep the ball? The game's actually quicker than you think.
Amazing.
But the intensity goes higher and higher. If you've got, I use clicker counters, and the assistant coach will do for the other team. But if you're shouting out the score as well, you can add the pressure and the intensity.
Amazing.
So really, that's my favourite game at the moment.
One habit that separates the best from the rest?
I'm going to say practice. And what I mean by that is it might be technical, it might be analysis, it might be around your mindset, it might just even be around making sure you do your recovery and your nutrition. You know, you're eating and drinking the right things. But the best players are the most consistent with working on what they need to work on.
And lastly, if you could give every 16-year-old one message in 5 words, what would it be?
So I've got 3 for you.
Okay.
That are all slightly different, but I really like all of them.
Okay.
So dream big, work every day.
Yeah.
failure teaches more than success,
Yeah.
and love winning and learning equally.
Yeah, a lot of that is around. Yeah, and what do you mean by those? So what's your hit home advice? Because I feel like they all kind of relate to each other. So what are you saying? That you need to try new things, have new experiences, don't be afraid of losing?
Yeah, I think you should be ambitious. I don't think anybody got to elite level in any area of life without having a goal or an ambition in the first place. But know that in order to achieve that, you've got to work really hard.
What does just lastly, what does hard work mean? Because I have this conversation a lot. I run a marathon every day. I think I work really hard. You go to the gym twice a week. You're telling me you work hard. What does hard? I might get injured because I go and kick too many balls.
I think it would be working to the best of your ability in whatever you're doing, given the context that you're in. So if I'm at home and I've got a tiny garden, but I've got a wall and a ball, what can I do with a ball and a wall that means I'm working on improving myself? That might be totally different to someone who's got, I don't know, it might be someone who's really affluent. They might have a football pitch in their garden. They might have loads of siblings and mates that come around all the time. And so the practice that they can do for themselves might look really different. But can you maximize your context to develop yourself as much as possible?
Amazing. Guys, that was a really interesting, informative intro, Dan. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time. And yeah, guys, if you have any questions or anything, do you have Instagram, Dan?
I have X. I'm on X.
Amazing. Well, if you can find Dan's, we'll tag his Twitter. If you want to message him on Twitter, say, hey, Dan, I learned this. This was really interesting. Thank you so much. This topic that you spoke about. Then we'll tag his Twitter or his X. But yeah, Dan, thank you so much. That was a really good episode and really appreciate your time.
Thanks very much.